What do you get when a London-raised American South African and a New York-raised Moroccan
meet on the interwebs and become instant soul sisters? One of them, an Ayurvedic practitioner and transformation coach, and the other, a Conspire breathwork coach and Reiki master teacher. Both obsessed with wellness, family, entrepreneurship, relationships, and the magic of human expansion and growth. You get a whole convo.
We truly believe that with an open heart, focused mind, and energy receptive to the possibilities, your wellness journey can guide you to a life that exceeds your wildest dreams.
Welcome to our podcast. We're Ella and Iman, and we are so happy you're here. Come vibe with us as we explore the wholeness of being through the lens of wellness.
Welcome to a whole convo with Ella and Iman. Iman,
Woohoo! Welcome.
tell me something. Are your mistakes your friend or your foe?
Ooh, girl, you know me. I'm gonna have to take it back one step before that. What can we define mistake?
See, this is the thing. Does it matter what a mistake is? Because
Mm,
even if we just take it in a generic sense, something has not gone the way that we expected it to go, desired that it went, planned for it to go.
Okay, see, that gives me a lot more clarity. 100% for those things that go, in a way that we didn't think was gonna go or a plan. That is 100% always a friend for me. That's my perspective. Because I've just had so many examples and experiences in my life that have showed me the things that I thought I wanted, the things that I really, the things that I thought, should be, again, capital letters, should be for me, and they didn't pan out that way, have always, always been the biggest blessing in disguise.
Mm.
I have too much proof. I have just too many
She's got
receipts.
receipts.
Yeah, it's so interesting because just the other day, my husband and I were in the car talking about this, not in this sense, obviously, in this way you put it, but he said, remember when I applied to that gig at the hotel? This is like a few years ago. Um, you know, this position he really wanted at this like really cool hotel that had these things. And we were literally talking about how if he had gotten it, he would have never known or played pickleball. Just there's certain things that wouldn't happen. So like you just look at the most logical way something can unfold and pan out, and it's very obvious that other things would not fit into that recipe. They wouldn't
Mm.
fit into that equation. So we were just talking about that very specific example that was years ago. And now we can't imagine life without his pickleball. Like we think that we want something or oh my God, I can't believe it didn't work out, or this is
Mm.
such a disappointment, or this is not fair. And it's like nothing that is meant for us will ever pass us by. And I really believe in that saying. I don't care how corny it sounds, how simplistic, things that are meant for me will never not be in my world. That are meant for me, that are in alignment, that are in connection with my spirit. So I would say they're friends when those things happen. But when I think about other types of maybe mistakes where it's not something necessarily that didn't pan out, but let's say it's something that maybe I knew I shouldn't have said or shouldn't have done. And I feel like I made a mistake in that part, even though I feel like bad about it or I wish I would have done things differently. I also can't say it's a foe because it's taught me something. It has shown me a way that I maybe have preferred to do it. And so that there's a lesson in that. There's an evolution in that. I think when people are aware of quote unquote mistakes and they actually look at them as a part of their evolution and expansion, then it's a friend. But if we're
Mm.
looking at mistakes or things that don't unfold as like this like drastic disappointment or we're using it as a way to beat ourselves up, then that can be a foe for sure. It can be a very internal enemy.
And I feel like for me, where this thinking comes from is tends to be an external response to life.
Mm.
So I I feel like the way that I was taught in school, and I don't think that it's changed much yet. I feel there are moves to changing how children learn and the paradigm and context that learning is placed into. But there is so much being taught that you're wrong. There's a right or wrong answer.
Oh,
You're taught that this is what you're aiming for, and anything that is not that is incorrect. Therefore, you're mistaken. And this idea that if I don't do it right, there's something wrong with me,
yeah.
versus, well, okay, this is where the direction, this is what we're trying to show you. This is the direction we're moving into. What did you learn? What did you learn? Because you kind of didn't get it this time. What have you learned along the way? And I don't know whether it's because there's not enough time for kids to be taught that way, but there's an internalization that if I make a mistake, I don't do something correctly, and that could lead to all kinds of things. Because I love that example of when things don't go according to plan. I do get that there's, what do they say? Rejection is protection. There is
Mhm.
something
Yes.
waiting that we can't see at the time that it's going wrong, even though it may hurt and it may be challenging to deal with that disappointment. And when we think that we have to do things, there's a very rigid understanding of how we have to conduct ourselves and what the outcomes will be. Along with that comes the idea that we make ourselves wrong. And that's where we feel like mistakes are faux, because it's like, if I don't get it right, I'm going to be in trouble. If I don't get it right, all this judgment is going to happen. And I can say personally, in relation to my upbringing and certain traumatic events that happened, it was drummed into me this idea that things have to be perfect, things
Hmm.
have to go a certain way. And the fear of punishment and the experience of punishment was real, and it
Yeah,
felt heavy,
I
and
can relate.
it created this this freezing response in me, like it has to be perfect, and if it's not right, it's too much to bear the consequence of it not being right. And I think that's where the idea of mistakes being a foe comes from. And if you're a person who's watching this or listening to that, who can relate and feel that the idea of making a mistake chills you to your bone, there's the invitation that this may not be coming from your truth about yourself, or the breadth that life has to offer you in learning how to play with and being curious about how life unfolds, versus living through this very rigid set of beliefs or consequences that may have been externally imposed on you about who you are, what you do, how you do it, how you see the world, and how you see life around you.
Yes, that's a big one, Ella, because just in hearing you say that, there's so much baggage that comes with that, right? That way of thinking, that way that we've been taught that mistakes are like the death of us and we're not good enough and we've messed up and there's no turning back. And I think there's so much baggage with that that I think leaves it to us, the now adult, the individual, the person that does want to grow and
Mm,
want to heal that because there's work to be done. There's work to be done.
absolutely.
For sure,
Absolutely.
because we can't continue living a kind of life that always makes us smaller or limits our capacity to create and to grow if we're constantly thinking, "Oh my goodness, I'm not even gonna try because if I make a mistake, I've messed up, or I'm not good, or this is so bad." That, like you said, it like freezes us or it cripples us to actually want to take a bold move towards what we really want. So Definitely a lot of work. That definitely a lot of work because I can relate to that. I can relate to that kind of upbringing that you felt like you had to be perfect. You had to almost be performative. You know, you
Mm.
had to make sure you upheld that good girl, perception, and you're not a disappointment and you're doing good in school and this, and that, and the list goes on. And that comes with a lot of molding and a lot of like, very specific ways in which to live that were taught to us that now as adults we kind of have to just little by little kind of peel away and just like you said, ask, is this part of my truth? Do I really feel this way? And I think that's an important question to ask ourselves for sure.
It really is. And it's, there are so many stages of recognizing the impact of how we interact with perceived mistakes and what we even make that word mean to us and how we allow the thought of making a mistake to affect the decisions and the moves that we make and the responsibility that we take for being who we want to be and living a life that feels that it represents who we are, at various stages or various seasons of our life. Because what may have been a mistake for me when I was 15 may not be a mistake for me when I'm 25 or 35.
Right.
So it's not a static, again, there's so much fluidity. There's so much room to breathe into it, to maneuver that understanding as to how that applies to our lives in the particular moment of our life that we're living in, whether we're in a relationship or not. So, me as a single woman may do things very differently and trying to transpose that way of approach to life if I'm in a relationship may not fly the same way. So there's just so many different aspects to understanding what it means to our relationship with the mistakes and how we perceive it. Because I think one of the most beautiful things we can as human beings is to understand that we're not wrong. And
Yeah.
that's not about being good or bad and right or wrong in the sense of there are certain ways that human beings are expected to treat each other, and there are certain lines that we don't cross as human beings. But my interpretation of what it means to have a good job may not be your interpretation of what it means to have a good job, and that doesn't make me wrong and it doesn't make you right or vice versa, but it's according to the things that line up with me and the things that feel right for me and how my energy works and the things that I also want to create in my own life. So that idea that it could be a mistake for me, for example, when I was 30 something, it was 30, in fact, 30 years old, and I decided to leave this particular full-time job that I had because it wasn't aligned with me bringing up two small children. Now, many people could have looked in on that scenario and said, "Oh, that's a mistake. You are making a mistake
Mm,
leaving that situation." And there were consequences for sure for me making that decision, but it wasn't a mistake when I looked at the bigger picture of my life and I looked at what it was that I was trying to create by being this woman, mother on my own, bringing up my children. So it's my ability to own that I wasn't wrong for doing that made that decision really joyful. It made that decision something that I could take with me and show as an example as well to my girls that sometimes things don't look the way that others may understand them, and life, it doesn't always pan out in the way that you are taught that it needs to, but it still becomes a friend to be able to make that perceived mistake at that time, because
mm,
look what it gave me, look what it gave our relationships, look how I could have more available to invest in my children and to support them and to encourage them to grow. But at any point, if I just took that out of that context, that could be perceived as a mistake. And I've done something that is really not the best thing to do. And I'm sure that you have many examples of that kind of decision that you've made about your life that someone could easily judge as a mistake.
Oh, for sure, many. And I think that's what I wanted to say right now as you were finishing up your thought. I think it's such an important point to bring up is that who's defining this quote unquote mistake? That's why I said in the beginning, there have been times where, okay, I felt like maybe in communication or something that I've done in my life, I would see that it was, ooh, like, you know what? That was a mistake on my part. And I want to take accountability and I want to
Mm,
take responsibility. I'm not going to go down this deprecation rabbit hole now and beat myself up about it, but I can say there's nothing wrong with saying, I think that was a mistake. For me, anyway, my perspective is that. And so, how do I want to move forward? How do I want to grow from this? How do I want to learn from this?
hmm
And I think that's a very important aspect of growth and adulthood, honestly. But then what you just said, your point of like you making a decision that impacts you, impacted your girls at the time. This is a life decision that you wanted to make and you felt in alignment with that, but someone else may have perceived it as, oh my goodness, this is a mistake. That's where we really have to distinguish what does it really mean for someone else to say we made a mistake that actually doesn't feel like that for us. And not to go down this path of, oh my God, doubt. And am I making this, am I making the wrong decision? And are they right? And then adding so much more to
mm,
that than
mm,
necessary and really being clear to what our truth is. Because, yeah, I too have had those examples in my life or maybe a family member would say, oh my goodness, why did you do that? Or that was such a good situation you were in. Why did you leave that? Or et cetera, et cetera. And you're like, no, because I was miserable in it. That's why. Were
I
you in
needed
my
to get
body?
out. Yes.
Were you in my body? Are you in my spirit? Are you in my mindset? Are you living the life that I'm breathing every day? So we do have
Mm,
to have that very, very bold way of saying, you know what? No, this was what was needed for me, and it's not a
mm.
mistake. And it's okay
Yes.
that you feel that way. I respect your consideration, but get out of my face.
Yeah. Just like you keep that over there, please. Thank you very
Keep that
much.
over there. Yeah.
100%. And also the idea, because I feel like I love the word mistake. I love that the idea of what it can conjure up. I love the idea that there could be incorrect thinking around what it means to make a mistake. And even
Mhm.
like, it's a bit tongue in cheek, friend or foe, because it's always a friend. My feeling is some of the points that you've raised, some of the ways I've I've experienced it play out in my life. And this idea that we can reclaim our mistakes and we can own them and we can
Yes.
choose to create this desire where it's like, yes, we there are lessons. Because like sometimes I think people say, oh yeah, like what's the lesson? What's the lesson? And then we get stuck there. We don't actually allow that to develop into growth. We don't allow that to be move beyond the past of saying, oh yeah, I can see I made a mistake there. Or, oh yeah, the lesson is that maybe I shouldn't speak out before I've considered what it is that I want to say. But then I keep finding myself speaking out and speaking out and speaking out. So how do I own those mistakes? And how do I really embody it, breathe it in, make it a friend? And what do I need to let go of in order to have that embodiment of the growth so that I can put my hand up and say, yeah, I used to make this mistake where I was blah, 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 blah. And now can you even tell? Because I'm living proof that I wasn't afraid to make those mistakes as many times as I needed to
Yes.
and absorb it, really breathe it in so that the output is a completely different experience for you and for me.
Love that. Couldn't have said it better myself. That is spot on. Exactly. The ownership of that mistake, allowing the growth, because there's no growth, there's no expansion, there's no evolution in our human nature and our development as beings without this big word mistake. So, you girl. That's why I love you. I couldn't have said it better. That was so spot on, and I love it. That is a perfect way to end. Are we taking ownership for our mistakes and actually embodying the lessons that may come with it?
And like just reclaiming what it means to make a mistake as well. I think that's really important because it just could be so easy to just get up in court and yeah, I made a mistake and just trying to flip it off, just dismiss it. But actually, let me take that in and decide how to proceed with clarity, with power, with remembering who I am and not shaming myself because I made that mistake.
Beautiful. Love it. I hope our listeners and viewers have enjoyed this whole convo as much as I have. Thank you so much to everyone that's tuned in. This has been a whole convo with Ella and Iman.
Until next time.
That is a wrap on this week's convo. We had a blast talking to you.
Thank you for sharing your time, hearts, and minds with us.
We hope this episode left you thinking, feeling, and maybe even breathing a little deeper. If it moved something in you, please share it, text it to a friend, or just sit with it.
Remember, the power of change can start with the simplest convo.
And if you have any comments or thoughts you'd like to share with us, please feel free to do so. We'd love to connect with you. Don't forget to subscribe to our show so you never miss a moment of the magic. And if you're curious about any of our services and offerings, check out the show notes for all the links and goodies. We're so grateful you're on this journey with us. Until next time,
stay rooted, stay whole.